Well, we're sitting here with a senator who's seen all he needs to see from last night, and he feels it was a big success for him. So let's talk right now with Senator Ted Cruz of
Good
Texas.
morning, Chris.
Good to see you here on New Day, sir. We know that you also see the events in the world as pivotal to the election right now, specifically the terror attacks.
Yes.
But let's talk about the returns.
Sure.
What do you believe your campaign showed last night?
Well, last night was a terrific victory. You know, in Utah, we were hoping very much to break 50%, get to 51. We ended up with a landslide victory at 69% in the state of Utah, picked up another 40 delegates. And I think that's really reflective of what we're seeing across the country. Utah is now the 10th state where we've beaten Donald Trump. And what we're seeing is really Republicans uniting behind our campaign. As the only campaign that has beaten Donald Trump over and over again and that can beat Donald Trump. And so it's very encouraging to see nearly 70% of the vote in Utah is a powerful affirmation of what's happening.
Now, obviously, the Trump campaign points to Arizona. Yeah. The criticism is, the legitimate criticism is, can Ted Cruz build a big enough coalition to get to 1237 or to stop Donald Trump from 1237? Nobody can argue a case the way you do, certainly at this table. Make the case.
Well, look, Arizona, actually, a lot of the results were baked in the cake. They'd been early voting for a month, and so much of Donald's win came from people who voted a month ago when the race was very, very different. What we're seeing all across the country is the momentum is with us, and I'll tell you one of the things that shows that is this morning, Jeb Bush endorsed our campaign. And you know, if you think about it, in the last 10 days, we've been endorsed by Jeb Bush, Mitt Romney, Mike Lee, and Mark Levin. I mean, you want to talk about a broad coalition, ideologically diverse, that covers the entire spectrum of the Republican Party. And what we're seeing is 65 to 70% of Republicans nationally recognize that Donald Trump is not the right candidate to go up head-to-head with Hillary Clinton, that Donald loses to Hillary. In fact, I'll tell you, Chris, there was an amazing poll last week that showed if Donald were the nominee, Donald loses Utah to Hillary. Now, Utah is as bright red, conservative a state as there is in the country, and if the Republican nominee can't carry Utah as Donald Trump can, it means we get clobbered in a Walter Mondale-style landslide, and that's why so many Republicans are uniting behind our campaign, because Donald loses to Hillary, and we beat Hillary.
So you have trouble on both sides of you, though. You have Donald Trump there, who's the front runner, and you have Governor Kasich, who says he's not going anywhere. He believes he can build the broader coalition better than you can. What do you say to Governor Kasich?
Well, you know, facts are stubborn things. John Kasich is a good man. He's an honorable man. But he has no path to the nomination. It's mathematically impossible for John Kasich to become the Republican nominee. He needs more than 100% of the remaining delegates. And it's worth remembering, Kasich went 0 for 27, lost 27 states in a row. Then he won his home state. And then last night he lost again overwhelmingly in both Utah and Arizona.
No delegates for the governor last night.
No delegates.
As we see them currently apportioned.
In 2 weeks, he's going to lose Wisconsin again, and you can't lose every state and expect to be the nominee. Right now, Kasich's role is really being a spoiler. Kasich benefits Donald Trump. Indeed, Mitt Romney said just a couple of days ago that a vote for John Kasich is a vote for Donald Trump. And the reason is, look, Trump has a hard ceiling of 35 to 40% that he has real trouble crossing. And the head-to-head, we don't not only beat Donald, we beat him badly. We beat him by double digits. What Kasich can do is pull enough votes away to let Trump win with a plurality. And I'll give you an example.
Have you tried to combine with Governor Kasich? Have you had any thought of that, let alone conversation about it?
You know, I think very highly of Kasich. I would certainly think I would love to have his support. I think he'd be a tremendous addition to an administration. But, you know, it's worth underscoring what's happening. You know, a week ago in Illinois, Donald Trump got 38% in Illinois. I got 30%. Kasich was at 19. If Kasich hadn't been in the race, we would have beaten Donald Trump in Illinois, and that's a great example.
How do you know that Kasich's people go to Cruz?
Because the vast majority of them go to Cruz. We've seen that all across the country. That's what the polling numbers show, is that the vast majority come to us. But what Kasich's being in the race did is it let Donald win Illinois with 38%. We talked about his 40% ceiling. It let a plurality win. And listen, I know John doesn't want to be a spoiler. And at the end of the day, I believe he's going to put country first. And we've got to come together and unite. If you don't have a path to winning, It's time to come together and
He
unite.
thinks he's looking good at the convention, that the best hope for the party right now is you go to convention, you, with Kasich's help, depending on how you look at it, stop Donald Trump from getting to 1, 2, 3, 7. You go there after the first vote. It's basically an open convention, and he believes he has more friends there than you do.
Well, number one, it's mathematically impossible for him to get there.
To 1, 2, 3, 7.
Yes. But number two, under the rules, he won't even be on the ballot. The RNC rules provide that to be on the ballot, you have to have won 8 states. There are only 2 people who will meet that threshold, Donald Trump and me. We'll be the only 2 names on the ballot. Kasich cannot even be voted on in the convention. The only thing Kasich can do is what he's doing now, which is play the role of a spoiler and help Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, listen, he lost badly last night. In Wisconsin, he's going to lose in 2 weeks. And when you keep losing and losing and losing, what happens in politics is, your money dries up. You can't keep running a campaign.
Money is momentum, there's no question, and momentum is money.
Yeah.
It goes both ways, no question about that. One quick question on style, and then I know we need to talk about terror. It matters too much. You have made an adjustment quicker than Senator Marco Rubio did away from trying to out-Trump Trump in terms of going head-to-head. He is baiting you again with what he thought you were responsible for with the picture of his wife. I know it was the super PAC, I know, but he blames you. You took the bait and responded and called him more of a coward than you thought. Do you believe that that is taking you in the direction you need to be to beat Donald Trump with any kind of broad-based coalition you're looking to build?
Well, let's be clear. The tweet he was unhappy about was not even a super PAC supporting me. It's an independent group. I don't know them. I've never spoken to them. I have nothing to do with them. But what Donald did last night, and listen, you're in New York. You've seen this a lot. When Donald gets scared, when he gets angry, when he's threatened, he begins yelling, he begins screaming, he begins often cursing, and he begins trying to be a bully. So last night, Donald threatened my wife. He went directly after my wife. And I got to tell you that, number one, Heidi, my wife, she's the daughter of missionaries in Africa. She is my best friend in the world. And if Donald wants to get in a character fight, he's better off sticking with me because Heidi is way out of his league. But it is also, it reveals a lot about character. It reveals a lot about class, that Donald's instinct is to try to attack my wife and sully her. And you know what? That should be beneath Donald. But Chris, the reason he's doing that is because he had a very bad night last night. He got clobbered in Utah. Remember, Donald campaigned in Utah. He tried to win Utah, and he got blown out of the water. And he is seeing Republicans uniting behind our campaign. Donald recognizes 65 to 70% of Republicans know that if we nominate Donald, we lose to Hillary. And he's very dismayed, so he wants to drag it into the gutter. He wants to drag it into personal attacks. And at the end of the day, I have no interest in that. I'm going to stay focused on solving the problems facing this country, bringing back jobs and economic growth, raising wages, securing the borders, protecting our rights, and protecting this country from radical Islamic terrorists.
The point is, I'm only asking you about it because you responded. I know you get that. So let's move on to what matters more. You believe that Brussels is a metaphor. Most people who are around these situations do. What would you do that Donald Trump would not do? What would you do differently to keep America safe from something like Brussels happening here, God forbid?
Well, let me say, first of all, that our prayers are with the families of those who were murdered, those who were injured, especially the 3 Americans, the Mormon missionaries who were over there, who were wounded in this terror attack. The terror attack in Brussels, it was not an isolated event. It was not a lone wolf. It is part of a broader pattern, a war that is being waged by radical Islamic terrorism, that is being waged by ISIS against us. They have declared jihad. Their intention to murder as many Europeans, as many Israelis, as many Americans as they can. And we have right now a president who refuses to acknowledge what is happening. As a matter of political preference, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the entire Obama administration refuses even to utter the words radical Islamic terrorism. We need a commander-in-chief who will identify the enemy and do everything necessary to defeat it. And as president...
Their argument is you don't want to paint with too broad a brush and blame an entire faith for the acts of the worst among them. And that's why there's criticism about policing Muslim communities as if they were all an enemy.
Listen, nobody is blaming an entire faith, but radical Islamic terrorism, jihadism, is a very discreet. It is a real threat. And this administration's in denial. Following the Paris terror attacks, following San Bernardino, President Obama goes on national television, won't say radical Islamic terrorism, but lectures Americans on Islamophobia. Enough is enough. Let's have a commander-in-chief who keeps us safe. And you know, Chris, a lot of folks in the media say, well, gosh, what difference does it make what you call it? It makes a lot of difference, because when you identify the enemy, you then target your efforts to defeating it. And because Obama and Hillary refuse to identify the enemy, what happens is that they advocate policies. For example, both Obama and Hillary advocate bringing tens of thousands of Syrian Muslim refugees to America, despite the fact that ISIS has said they want to infiltrate those refugees, send jihadists here to murder Americans, and despite the fact that the head of the FBI, James Comey, was appointed by Barack Obama, has told Congress the FBI cannot vet those refugees to ensure that they're not terrorists. We need a president whose first priority won't be political correctness, won't be satisfying partisan objectives, but rather whose first priority will be, as commander-in-chief, keeping America safe. That's what I'll do as president.
They say, call it radical Islamism, then. Don't call it
Oh, they
Islam.
don't, but
Islamism is something different, and it winds up painting, again, that faith with a brush, and that if you don't let in refugees, people who are desperate, you wind up feeding the problem and negating the perception of America as someone who's better than the norm.
Chris, you're exactly right that Islamism is different from Islam. And Islamism is a political and theocratic view that commands its adherents to wage violent jihad against infidels, and they define infidels as everybody else on earth, to either murder them or forcibly convert them, to impose Sharia law. And Islamism is our enemy. Islamism is what commands jihad, but President Obama will not say that. Hillary Clinton will not say that. They do not identify Islamism as the threat, as the problem. And I'll give you another example of how political correctness is costing lives. The San Bernardino terrorist, the female terrorist, posted publicly on social media a call to jihad. The Obama administration refused to look at social media because they didn't think it would be politically correct to look at social media. We've got a threat.
There were some legal issues also, which I'm sure you understand.
There are no legal barriers to monitoring public social media displays, particularly overseas. Now, I would point out she also, on her visa application, put a fake address in Pakistan. The vetting didn't notice it was a fake address, let her in, and Americans were murdered. And, you know, it has been interesting in the last 24 hours when I called for proactive policing directed at radical Islamic terrorism. The reaction from Democrats, Mayor de Blasio here in New York held a press conference blasting me, attacking me. It's an example where Democrats are more concerned about political correctness than they are about keeping us safe, and that's why people are so fed up. We need a commander-in-chief whose priority is keeping the American people safe, and that's what I'll do. And you asked a minute ago about Donald Trump. You know, I'll note that just 2 days ago, Donald Trump advocated essentially withdrawing from NATO. The next day, the Brussels attack occurred. Brussels is where NATO is headquartered. Withdrawing from NATO would be a catastrophic mistake. It would hand Putin a massive victory. It would hand ISIS a massive victory. And I think Donald Trump's foreign policy weakness, his isolationism, it is frankly to the left of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Neither Obama nor Hillary advocate withdrawing from NATO.
Absolutely.
And
they do not.
And Trump's views would make America more dangerous. It's just like he says he wants to be neutral between Israel and the Palestinians. We need a president who isn't neutral, who recognizes that radical Islamic terrorists are a threat and we need to defeat them.
Trump has said since then that he doesn't know that neutrality is probable, but your point is well made. Senator Ted Cruz, thank you very much for joining us on New Day. You are always welcome here throughout the election to discuss what matters.
I appreciate it.
I do as well.